Hey everyone, my name is Lil Rose-Wilen, and I am going to share a little bit about my biography project on the artist Celia Herrera Rodríguez. Celia identifies as Chicana with an X and Odami. And Odami are the Northern Tepehuan indigenous people of Mexico, indigenous to Southern Chihuahua. And the reason I felt drawn to picking Celia as my person to write about was that she's an artist and I'm an artist as well. And I thought it would be really exciting after this semester of doing a lot of reading to look at some Chicana art. Celia is a painter, an installation artist, and a performance artist. She's also worked with Cherry Moraga, who's somebody whose name you probably recognize from this semester. Cherry is a playwright, and Celia Rodríguez has worked on Cherry's plays as a set designer and costume designer. She's also an educator who teaches Chicano/A and Mexican modernist art at the California College for Arts and teaches Mexicano/A art history and practice at UC Berkeley. So my paper started in Celia's childhood. She was born in 1952, so she's currently 70 years old. And her grandmother immigrated to the US when her grandma was 40 years old. And I couldn't find a lot in my research on Celia's other family's origin in the US. But Celia grew up in Sacramento, California, and she describes her childhood as feeling like she's constantly in opposition. So her grandma, Celia, who was a very academically inclined child who knew she wanted to be an artist and an educator, when her grandma would see her reading, she would scold her and say, "The more you read, the less you understand." And she was also getting teachers in school kind of telling her that maybe she shouldn't be an artist, maybe going into social work would be a better way to service her community. So nobody was really affirming what she knew she wanted, and she felt this feeling of opposition and being not quite right. So this to me instantly connected so much to Gloria Anzaldua's concept of mestiza consciousness, especially her quote in the piece we read this week, where she says, "Within us and within la cultura chicana, commonly held beliefs of white culture attack commonly held beliefs of Mexican culture, and both attack commonly held beliefs of indigenous culture." So this anecdote about her grandma telling her not to read and her teachers telling her maybe she shouldn't be an artist, that to me is the attacks of the different cultures present in Celia's life. So her work becomes a search for truth, a search for self-determination within or through this opposition that she experiences as a child. And let me find where I'm at in my paper. And it's a search for this truth from within a Chicana body where truth has been obscured by colonialism and displacement. So to go more into that, I am going to share my screen and share a clip that is part of Celia's introduction that she gave to her Conocimiento Callejero installation. Let me share my screen. I'm going to play this short clip.
So if we have a spirit alive and we put it in a box shaped by the colonial project, whatever's inside is only translated and interpreted through the shape that it's been given. And the task then is to have the patience to allow whatever is still alive to disclose itself to us and to believe that those things are true. Thus, those.
All right. So if we think about this spirit alive that Celia talks about in that clip as being her own body and the Chicana body as a whole, Celia's work is about finding a true recognition of that body or that spirit that has been so hidden, obscured, distorted by the process of colonialism and displacement. So after I talk about her upbringing and this search for truth within opposition, I go into talk about what her process is. So what is her art making process that is the search for truth? And Celia emphasizes listening as a very important part of her art making process, listening to her elders, listening to the land, the earth, listening to her dreams, and having listening to those things be a way to guide her in making her work. And that sometimes she doesn't know what she's making. She's in this suspended ambiguity before the truth or the creation kind of is revealed. And I will play another clip from this same talk that talks about that kind of unknowing that is part of her process. All right, and that is at 28:24.
And so that's the task, I think, of us as artists, that we find and see and that we bring out and we say, look, I'm holding this in my hand and I don't know what it is, but it wants to connect. And so that's what the work is doing. All the figures, all of the elements that has come out of this work is an opportunity to contemplate and to work with just little symbols and little ideas that then start to unfold for me and make me want to, keep moving.
All right. So her description of the unknown relates to another element of Anzaldua's description of what mestiza consciousness is. And that's what the second part of my paper talks about. And how both these things, both Celia's search for self-determination amidst opposition, but also her art-making process that emphasizes listening and comfort in ambiguity, in not knowing. Both of those elements both connect to Anzaldua's concept of mestiza consciousness. So then in her art, her expression of mestiza consciousness, both in her art, but also in her work as an educator, also in her creation with Cherry Moraga of this center called Las Maestras Center, which is a center for Chicana artists and writers. That work empowers her own self-determination, but it is so important as a contribution to Chicana consciousness because it also creates space for the self-determination of all Chicanas. And that is what I learned about this week. Thank you all for watching this video. It was lovely getting to read all of your stuff and just be part of such an engaged class that seemed like we all really loved what we were learning. Have a great spring break.